Hello, this is Craig Camp, and welcome to Troon Talk. This is one of our Troon Conversations series where we talk to the people that make Troon Troon. And today we are talking to Micah Wagner, our assistant winemaker. Hello, Micah.
Hi, Craig.
And Micah has started our recording session with champagne, which Micah has a certain reputation for liking wine with bubbles in it.
Yes, and just good wine, right? No one has ever done this on your podcast, which you're always talking about wine.
Which means you're going to be on the podcast more.
Oh, okay. I should have thought this through, actually.
So first, tell us about the champagne we're drinking.
Yeah, so this is one of my favorites. You were looking earlier, and yes, sorry.
There we go.
Yeah. So you notice the Demeter on the back of this. So Le Large Peugeot is one of my favorite champagnes. They're a grower champagne that I first came across in Sonoma County. And I forget exactly where the article was written, but I was telling you before rolling this that they wrote an article a few years ago about how they were blowing up in, I think it was General Bay Area, but they have a family member that worked at a spa in Sonoma that me and my friends would go to. And so I've been happy that they make a lot of different SKUs and they're all delicious. And this was the last one at Kimball's, so it had your name on it.
Well, and I thank you for it because it is absolutely delicious. So let's start what led you down to this road of champagne addiction.
I mean, I think some of my mentors really liked champagne early on, and it always surprises me because occasionally you find people that don't like bubbles, but typically it's a crowd pleaser. So I think that, no matter the occasion, or even if it's not really an occasion, it's like bubbles just make everything better. And also learning more about the winemaking process over the years, it's really hard to do right. Like, it's hard to make wine in general, but great bubbles is even harder. So yeah, I've been happy to add champagne to Troon.
Well, we all appreciate it all the time. So let's talk a little bit about your history. How did you start in the wine business?
Sure. Do you want a short version? Because I feel like
give us the long version.
Okay. I did speak a little bit about this, I think, 2 years ago when I first started here. But I originally wanted to be a chef. I was in 4-H as a kid. My mom's family has a farm, so always around a lot of agriculture and food. And I just remember both sides of my family always having really great recipes and enjoying entertaining and just having a lot of, I would say, culture to growing up. Like, my dad's side is Sicilian, so I got kind of a glimpse into what that lifestyle is like, and went to school at Sonoma State for business during college because my parents were like, this chef thing is a great idea, but kind of encouraged me to have other options, which I'm really grateful for.
But was that the wine business program?
It was, yeah. So I started just as a marketing major, actually. Mm-hmm. And I was working in kitchens and restaurants during that time, and figured okay, I could, manage a restaurant or just, use business in some way in the future. And then it was partway through that I added the wine business strategies to that. And part of it was, I turned 21 and I was seeing a lot of people tasting wine or bartending, learning different cocktails. And that at the time, I feel like food and wine pairings for people who are aspiring chefs was getting a little bit bigger. And people were actually having dinners where they would, meet the chef, meet the winemaker. And so I thought that was a good move, just kind of as an extra resume builder, honestly. The goal was not to be a winemaker, and actually they go over a bit of production in that program, but it's a little more of just how to successfully build and run vineyards and wineries.
Because Sonoma State has quite an excellent...
An amazing program, yeah. I had a really good time. It's a fairly small program, and so, you're right in Sonoma County, right next to Napa. It's like all of us who were in the program as students, we all had a lot of really cool opportunities to work internships places. Some people did work harvest during that time. We networked a lot. I started working at wineries that had a food scene at them, and was kind of, seeing both, working at jobs, especially at Hamel, which is biodynamic, that had a chef, had gardens, had animals, but then also had wine. And so I got even more education, basically, and hands-on experience. And then my last class, actually, through Sonoma State, was done really well. They would choose a different country every year, but my year was Spain, and it was about a month of us driving around, going to all these different wineries and meeting with viticulturalists and winemakers. And we got amazing. I mean, I understand now like how busy I am as a winemaker. It's like crazy they spent so much time with us, but it was really wild because I hadn't worked anywhere outside of Sonoma and Napa at the time in wine. I learned about other regions. I drank a lot of things, but to actually firsthand go to Europe with a bunch of other people studying wine. And our goal was to be able to write a paper at the end comparing the European wine scene and what it takes to run a business there successfully versus in the United States.
So that was a business trip.
It was,
yeah.
Yes, I like how you phrased that.
Yeah. Yes.
It was business. Yeah. But yes, the focus was more so, budgets, labor, wine club, hospitality. And so they did cover a bit how their vineyards worked, how their winemaking practices worked. But, I had still never used a pump at that point, for example. So it was more focused on wine business strategies. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when did the transition happen from the business side to the production side of winemaking?
So I like to say it kind of accidentally happened because I had mentioned I was working at Hamel, which is also biodynamic, and John Hamel is a wonderful winemaker. He had done a bit of woofing as well, so that...
Woofing is?
So what's the exact, actually?
It's a program for your basically volunteer labor to learn on farms.
Yeah.
Organic farms, I believe.
Yeah, World Organic.
Yeah.
Should look it up.
Yeah.
I should know this, actually, but it's been a very long time since I've used that site. Garrett will shame me for this later. Yeah, but basically you can, and I did this at one point too, it's like there are all these different sites where you can work on organic farms and wineries that I learned about over the years. But basically, I started off, I think, at the perfect winery it showed me a lot of what I was used to, like there was great farming, wine, food, like all these different things that I was interested in. And in my mind, we were doing everything the right way, but also like I didn't see another way, right? And I kept seeing all of these different harvest interns every year come, travel to work for a few months and live there. And so I was like, well, that might be cool to see other parts of the world. And, I already know a little bit about wine. And John had actually recommended, he's like, if you want to do something abroad, maybe try doing one here in the States first, just because you're sometimes dealing with other languages. It's all new tools. And so I kind of randomly, I found a Union Wine Company actually on, I think it would have been Traveling Winemakers. And I worked there for my first harvest, which at the time they were like 250,000 case production. I know they're way more now, but it was a great spot to learn all the tools, meet a ton of people. We had like 20 something interns. It was running 24/7. And what ended up happening was I kind of met a lot of who became my people, because a lot of places like that, they get, all these international winemakers, some of whom like came from owning their own vineyards and wineries back home, but they were trying to catch something in the opposite hemisphere and travel a bit here. And so I was aiming originally to go to Australia because obviously they speak English, and I thought that would make learning new things a little bit easier, learning new tools easier. But I ended up meeting one of my best friends in Brazil, and he was like, we've never hired an intern from the US. Like, do you want to come work with us? Because we worked really well together. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, you make wine in Brazil, you know.
That was the same year, right?
It was the same year, yeah. And so I ended up, because I couldn't get a job in Australia on time and like get the visa and everything, I ended up going to Brazil, which was kind of lucky because it just made this journey longer, right? And when I was working harvest in Brazil, I was looking online, kind of trying to figure out like, okay, you know, I got to go back to the States. Like, I have a car there, I have all my things there. I was like, there's so many other opportunities all over the place. Like, it's too bad I have all this stuff. And so I went back and I worked another harvest in the Santa Cruz Mountains, which was amazing. It was at Reese. I think I've poured some other wine for you before, but very similar to this actually, where it's a lot of very small fermentations, low intervention. They are biodynamic as well. And it was I got to see the sciencey side of it with a crew that's very fun, drinks very well. And then at the end of that season, I actually sold my car and got rid of a lot of stuff and moved to Australia for 2 years and worked in a bunch of wineries and vineyards, one of which, so I started at Two Hands, if you're familiar.
So that wasn't seasonal. You worked there for 2 years.
I did, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I typically just say I harvest hopped around for a while because I have a very obnoxious resume. I feel like it's a lot. But I did move, and I was kind of like, let's just see what happens. And I knew I had that harvest internship lined up at Two Hands, which was a great crew, met a lot of really cool people there. And then I was working with someone else who I had met at Union to follow in his vineyards. And so it was he and I doing like 10 acres of vines. And that kind of turned into, hey, well, do you want to, you know, help in the winery when needed and like help deliver wine when needed, and basically just like filling in, doing all the things kind of like basically as an apprentice for the year. So we ended up, you know, pruning everything, doing a lot of business related stuff. He also makes ginger beer, mead, other products. They host a lot of things at their wineries. So I just got to see how a small operation functions year round, and then make all of the grapes that we pruned, all the, you know, the vines that we worked on, into wine that following year. So that was a really big moment for that connection, right? Because up until this point, it was kind of more, oh, let me move here for 4 or 5 months. And that was the first time to really see that full process from someone that also had harvest hopped quite a bit, had taught himself a lot, was very well read. So he's not certified anything, but like he had worked on a biodynamic farm previously, and his parents had planted the vines after harvest hopping. So that was a really cool person to shadow, because I feel like he has a lot of similar background that I do. And I worked in New Zealand during that time too for a little bit, doing a pruning season at Burn Cottage, and then for Kat Quealy at Quealy Vineyards. She's a legend, brought a lot of cool varieties and Italian varieties to Mornington Peninsula. And then had gotten a lead that I wasn't really sure would go anywhere, but ended up being able to go to Sicily to work a harvest after. And I mentioned earlier I'm Sicilian, so I didn't really think that would ever happen. Always wanted to at least visit, but friend of a friend got me an interview, and so I was able to be a part of a crew in Marsala, working for Nino Baracco, and making a lot of really unique varieties, doing pied de couves, and, you know, going out there with him, just like, you know, looking at the vineyards, taking samples, prepping stuff, these amazing, super old like bush vines that are right on the ocean, and just like a crazy different scene. And so that was a really special experience, and traveling around there a bit I loved. And by this point, I should say, I had many friends telling me, hey, I think you want to be a winemaker. And I was still going, no, I'm just
How many years is this now?
I know, that was like probably year 4. And so many friends were just like, no, I think this is what you want to do. But I came back and I was like, well, let me, figure this out. And I lived in Tahoe to do a snowboard season for a little bit, what was supposed to be a little bit, and then COVID hit. And it was kind of during that time that I was like really reading a lot more books about wine, and was like, all right, like maybe I can do this. Maybe I can go back to school for this or something. And listening to more podcasts. And, when you're working harvest, it's like you're taking in so much information and communicating with people. You really don't always have that much time to like study all of these things. And so that was a nice moment for me to kind of stop and piece together a lot of things, and realize that I really missed making wine for that section of the year, because I could have been maybe in another place during the beginning of 2020, and I wasn't. So I wasn't working harvest because it's not harvest here. And so I did another harvest in Willamette Valley. I did a pruning season for a bit with Phil Couturi, Enterprise Vineyards, and
one of the most famous organic farmers in the United States.
Love the Couturis. Wonderful program, great people. And so when I was doing that, I was kind of looking for something more permanent in Sonoma County, and ended up getting a job through a friend again, who was like, well, this guy kind of has like his own project and basically a custom crush facility that like he kind of just wants someone who can do all the things and like manage it. And so I have an interview with him, and I talked to him, and I think in the past it was like, you're kind of on your own doing this, and so it was hard to find the right type of person to fill that, because there is something really great about the teamwork and like sharing wine with people, and just the aspect of having more culture to this. It is an art. I think it was kind of hard for them to find someone that could manage as many projects going on for as many clients and just kind of be by yourself all day. And I think through many of the people I worked with, but, again, I'll reference Quinn. It's like, that's what he did every day. And I actually got to see that. And so I was like, oh, I can do this. And to be honest, did not realize what I was fully getting into. Like I did, but I didn't. And so I, looked at the cellar, said yeah to the job, started working it. It had been a little bit since the last person had like full-time been there every day. So I kind of like made it over, laid everything out in the cellar in a way that made sense to me. We had to plan some bottlings kind of, I don't want to say on the fly, but it was like we had to get things scheduled sooner than later, and kind of created, a new inventory. And basically Massimo just trusted me. I think he got the sense that Craig's smiling because he's worked with me for a while.
I think a lot of people don't know what custom crush is.
Oh, that's a good point. I'm sorry.
Custom crush, of course, is a lot of winemakers can't afford their own facility.
Yeah.
So they have a communal facility, and in that group there is the winemaker for the custom crush that actually works with all those winemakers, which makes it, I think, an incredible educational experience
totally
for a young winemaker. So you were the one that was dealing with all the winemakers.
Well, and at some points I was the winemaker. So Massimo, I will say, is the one who had gotten all of these clients over the years. But a lot of them, it was like a family project where they had a vineyard and they would pick grapes with their family, and then it's like, okay, here are the grapes on their harvest day, and they'd like take a photo of us processing them, and then we do all the things. And then there were also people who were a little more involved and understood what the numbers meant, other consultants for people at certain points. So yeah, it's a lot of planning and managing. It's not like Troon, for example, where Nate's making calls on, I want this grape this day. This is how many tons we're going to get in. This is how long each piece of equipment is going to be needed for. And if it runs over a certain amount of time, that's not a problem. If anything goes wrong when you're dealing with multiple customers, it's like, then you're backed up and you have to stay even longer and make that happen, right? Because things are scheduled a certain way.
But it's an educational experience.
Yes.
Because you're dealing with different winemakers with different goals and perspectives and strategies.
Yeah.
And you have to adapt to.
Totally. A lot of brilliant people. I mean, I was in a lot of really cool blending sessions. I got to see people working with different yeasts for, they break up their lots and like have all these experiments going. Other people were a little bit lower intervention. So it felt very much like that job was made for me because I had just done all these things, right? And I still was learning more, but I just felt like I had been kind of prepped over the 5 years before and like had all the right experiences and mentorships to have the personality to be able to do something like that, because it is very hard. It's very long hours. And at the end of the day, I was responsible for everything. So, it's very different, obviously, than having like a full team where you can delegate things out. Sometimes you're just there by yourself at midnight, covered in glycol.
So early in your career, you had a lot of exposure to biodynamics, organics.
Yeah.
I think that's very unusual. How do you think that impacted your career?
Yeah. I think that it's kind of this perfect recipe, right? That my childhood had a lot of things in there that when I got to Hamel, like I said, I didn't even see that as like an option of how to be, right? I was just like, oh yeah, they're doing all these great farming practices. I mean, I hadn't heard of what every single spray was yet. The bearing of cow horns, for example, was like I remember the first time I was part of that. And so there were little aspects of it, right, that were new. But I think just the idea of sustainable, good farming and understanding what you're eating or drinking, that was something that probably my parents did a really good job, making sure I was involved in the right programs. And so then coming into this industry and seeing all of the variety of how people make wine, I obviously a few harvests in was like, okay, I have an idea of what I would like to be a part of. And I think it's great to see lots of different companies and how they function. And there was a point that I was kind of, being a big believer in regenerative agriculture. It's like, there were points that I was like, I worked at whatever company it was that wasn't certified, but it's like, okay, well, you still got this experience. And then also, I think pulling together different size production facilities and really truly understanding the amount of labor that takes, the attention to detail. It's like you do kind of have to experience all of that to create a better product, I think. But I would definitely say I like being a part of projects that are a lot more intentional. And I think that's a little more authentic to who I am. But I hope all winemakers at some point get an experience at a place that is biodynamic, or, even if you're not certified in the same ways that Troon is, it's like we should all know what we're eating and drinking. And a lot of people don't question that, and I find that kind of crazy. And I think we should be proud of putting out the products that we do and know that they're good for our consumers. So I'm really grateful for the way my journey went.
So, I mean, you've made wine all over the world, so southern, northern hemisphere.
Yeah.
But this is your years here have been your first experience in Southern Oregon.
Yes.
How do you describe and think about the Applegate Valley?
I love it. I actually was just talking to Garrett about this, how, you know, there aren't as many wineries and it's not as populated as, say, you know, Willamette Valley, Sonoma. But I really appreciate that. I think it's also because I've had so much exposure elsewhere. But this seems like such a little hidden gem to me. I mean, I was surprised I hadn't had more wines from down here when I did apply. And I think, you know, we're doing a lot of things really well, obviously. Like, I've had some great Shennons. We see a lot of Mourvedre and Syrah. But I think that there's definitely room for more people to, you know, grow more, try more. I'm really enjoying my time here a lot. And this project specifically.
And so you clearly have a particular love for Mourvedre. What is it that it speaks to you about that variety?
Well, I think that I love the variety, but I also understand at this point in my career that there have been different chapters I've had where I've been like obsessed with a grape or a region. And I think now what I want to do as a winemaker is be able to understand how to do best with what you have. And in 2024, when I was pressing Mourvedre for rosé for the first time here, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so delicious, like fresh strawberries. It was like making me think that I was in a field in summer. And I was like, Nate, come here, smell this, taste this. And we both were just like, man, like this really likes our property. This is really good. And then this year we feel like it's getting even better than last year. And it showed well as rosé and red. But the thing about that, and I would like encourage more people to look at it this way, is that sometimes as winemakers, we're like, oh, this would be a great wine to try and work towards. Like, you know, say you love Pinot. I had a Pinot phase for sure. And it's like, oh, it'd be really great to make a Pinot like this producer or in this way. And that's a great goal to have, and maybe you can do that. But I think that if you come across something really special like this property with all the things that we're doing, it's really important to recognize the, we'll say, like ingredient you have in front of you, because I love cooking. So I think I've always been like this with cooking, and I'm slowly trying to kind of transition it into my winemaking is, you know, you can try and make something into something else, or you could just be like, wow, this is really cool. Like, how do I make this the best way possible? And I think that was something with Mourvedre right away that I noticed, where I was just like, okay, this does really well on this property. Let's learn more about this grape. Let's see how we can make it the best way here. You know, we're very involved as the winemakers with our viticulture and obviously, you know, call the picks and decide how we're going to be making all of these grapes into wine, but then also how they're blended. And so I think it's just something that's showing really well that we can do a lot with. We obviously have added many SKUs since I started. And so it's just very versatile, loves this property, is delicious, is always balanced no matter what we're making. And I do tend to, I love the fruit that a lot of our wines carry here, but there's always this very interesting, like savory element, the tea note that we use a lot. Like Nate really loves tea, and I really appreciate a lot of these kind of unique flavors that Troon brings. But Mourvèdre is something that we have our eye on, and we want to see how we can make it in the future too.
So you love to cook. Food is an important part of Troon. We have gardens and fruit trees.
It is,
and things like that. What is it like for you as a winemaker to work in a farm that's also producing food?
It's so fun. So we have our garden, and then we also have our stand in the back. And what I started doing immediately working here, because Jennifer and Garrett will like tell us when we can pick certain things or if there's a bunch of extra produce one day. And so I started trying to do like different pairings with our wine and ingredients here. And we've done this with staff as well, actually. But it's been really fun. I mean, you always say like what grows together goes together. And again, I think that Troon has so much of what I love, and I do love food and wine. But it's been a dream, honestly, just like being able to be like, oh, I'm going to go home tonight. Like, what do I want to drink? What do I want to make with it? And I think more people should be doing this, honestly. Like, it's been a really fun experience. And then also having so many dinners, whether it's just for our staff or, when we're welcoming other people, getting to cook with so many people, it's been a really fun time.
So what does it mean to you to work on a biodynamic farm and make biodynamic wine? I mean, that's a unique aspect of Troon. We're also making biodynamic wine. And most people don't really understand that those are two separate things.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you as a winemaker?
I think that, number one, it sets a certain intention for you as a winemaker if you're making biodynamic wines. I think it makes you a little more aware. Everyone comes into this different ways. So for me, like, I didn't go to school for winemaking originally, as I've mentioned, but I got exposure to a lot of different methods people use. And I have always loved making and tasting a lot of lower intervention wines. So for me, it wasn't, a challenge like cutting out a certain part of my winemaking or anything. But again, going back to like knowing what goes into your food as the consumer is really important. It makes me really proud that we're making something that is the best it can be without really like tweaking it too much. You're really getting a sense of Troon in every glass, and by that I mean like what this property is, what that vintage gave us. We're big fans of vintage variation here. And I kind of look at it as like an artist putting out an album, right? It's like you don't want the same thing every time. You want to be able to see what they did that time, and it still sounds like them, and you still probably are going to like it. But to be able to kind of navigate something that you get to enjoy in that way is kind of a challenge, but also I think it challenges us to be better, right? And we make really good wine. I mean, I've always loved Nate's wines. Like, I'm very proud to be a part of a product that is so true to everything here on the property. And, Nate's mentioned this before too. It's like there are certain things, certain guidelines within biodynamic wine, but I mean, we're even lower intervention than that. So, it takes a lot of time and obviously years of planning to get to this point. But I think if you can be making wine this way, it can be delicious. And I'm just really proud to be a part of something like this.
So we're really early in the process here at Troon. We're very young vines. We're experimenting. Yeah. We're learning. How do you see the future of winemaking at Troon?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that there are probably certain things that are showing really well in a certain program. And what I mean by that is, we grow certain blocks and certain varieties for certain reasons. So like I'll use Mourvedre, for example, because I referenced it earlier as, we use some for rosé, some for red. I think there are definitely things that right now are really great in certain wines or being grown a certain way. But like you said, very young vines. So maybe in the future, we could kind of change exactly what we're farming certain grapes for. And I think that the blending process is just getting more fun. And it seems like already early on, we kind of know like what things might go into. So when you go into a blending session, you kind of have like your base blend that will be that certain wine, and then you're playing with the other elements. I think that we'll probably fine tune that over time too. And not that we'll know exactly what every blend is going to be, but I just think, with time you start to really realize what things are and what they produce every year. You've seen my board that's slowly correcting or collecting more.
Her whiteboard, a very complex whiteboard.
Yeah. But, I love Nate's process of trying vessel by vessel every single thing, because it really does allow you to understand every grape on every block. And when you're trying that many things too, all of us have our processes as winemakers, but it's like sometimes you write a certain note and it's really detailed, but then, you taste 100 barrels that day. And so later to come back to that and be like, oh, right. And then you look at a different date and you wrote something similar for another barrel from that lot. And it can kind of slowly start to teach you something about that wine or that block. And that's rare here too, right? Is that, these aren't grapes coming from a vineyard somewhere else. They're right here. So we get to see daily what's going on. We get to make calls with that too. And then again, are deciding exactly when they're picked. So I think that the fine tuning will happen. But we're having a fun time learning. And I mean, that's just part of the process too, right?
So on a personal level, what is it that's most important to you as a winemaker?
That's a good question. So I think that I want to feel good about the products that I'm making, and I want to make them in the best way possible. And I think that could change over time too, right? So this project is really special because we have all the right people and tools to be doing all the things that we're doing. And so I'm very grateful to be part of it. I think whether I'm making certain varieties, adding or not adding a certain amount of SO2, I, as the winemaker, want to be really knowledgeable about the grapes I'm working with and aware of how they're farmed and very transparent to the consumer. But I want to be making good stuff is probably the overall goal. And, if I can keep learning in the process and keep pushing myself and evolving, that would be amazing. I've always, and I kind of touched on this before, but, with my cooking, I've always loved that challenge of like, what do you have in the fridge? And then how are you going to make this? Like, don't necessarily go buy another ingredient. It's like, how do you get creative and actually make something that sometimes could end up being a staple in your routine? And so I would like to treat winemaking at a certain point the way I do with cooking. And I know it's going to take me a long time to get there, but I want to be able each year to be like, oh, you know what? We were planning to harvest these grapes at this Brix and pH, but like based on this year, I actually think that I should change that, and I'm not going to make this wine with it. I'm going to make this other thing, or, let me do this ad at this time because this will end up happening. I think a lot of people that I've worked with, I've seen a little more of, I don't want to use the word recipe. I don't mean for that to sound bad, but it's like, they kind of stick to one thing. And then I have worked with a few people where they just kind of make choices. And if I could end up doing that, where I just kind of in the moment, I know enough to be like, this is the best way to make these grapes into wine, I think that will mean that I've won, because then I can make the best wine out of anything.
Well, that seems like a good place to stop. It's been wonderful sitting here sipping champagne with you.
Thanks,
and talking
Craig.
about winemaking. And we're very thankful you're here with us at Troon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Troon Talk. For more information, please visit us at troonvineyard.com.